Welcome back, everyone, to the Cigar Smoke Filled Back Room. I am Doug with Tusk Consulting, tuskconsulting at gmail.com, tuskconsulting at gmail.com. If you're a pro gun Republican and you need political consulting help, drop me a line at that email. We'll help you out. If you are not a pro gun Republican, away with you. In the ongoing video series where we talk about things that are not discussed enough in politics, or at least not discussed honestly enough in politics. Today, we're going to talk about gerrymandering. And before we get too far into the video, the cigar of the day is a Grey Cliff double espresso. I had one of these the other day and it kind of canoed on me. Hope this one stays straight a little bit longer. And the bottle of the day is a Willet 11-year rye. This is one of the better whiskeys that you're going to run into. Hmm. Again, these are not sponsors to the program, but boy, I could really deal with that. Anyway, let's talk about gerrymandering. So, what is gerrymandering? Gerrymandering is the art of sculpting political districts to achieve a desired projected outcome. Congressional districts, that kind of thing. It is imperfect. Um, any process that looks into the future is imperfect. And in fact, sometimes districts are drawn to achieve a certain result and they fail to do so. But more often than not, they do achieve their desired result. So let's first talk a little bit of history. Um, Back in, I think it was 1812 in Massachusetts, then Governor Gary, Gerry, signed a bill, a redistricting bill, that included making a salamander shaped district, which looked like this. This is the political cartoon. And there's your salamander looking kind of dragon like thing there. Um, and this political cartoon was a response to that, and comparing it to a salamander, and hence, I guess technically we should call it gerrymandering, but in the common parlance of today, it's gerrymandering. The G has gone from being a hard G to a soft G, but regardless, so it's been around a while. That oddly shaped district was to accomplish a particular political result. So over 200 years, we've certainly been doing it here in the States. It's been happening longer than that. But here in America, it certainly has been around for over 200 years. Now, when we think of gerrymandering, this sculpting of districts to achieve a particular outcome, we often think of it, it's typically a pejorative, typically a negative. People love to rail against gerrymandering. They say, oh, it's bad, it's horrible, it's awful. And they like to think that it is universally illegal. And that's not true. And not only is it in many cases legal, in some cases it's actually required by law, or at least very much encouraged by law. I'll give you a great example. The Voting Rights Act of 1965. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but the Voting Rights Act of 1965 encourages, this is probably the most charitable way to put it, encourages majority minority districts. Essentially, if you can make a majority minority congressional district, you should. If you fail to do so when you can, the odds of you getting sued under the Voting Rights Act of 1965 are pretty darn high, and then the judge is going to draw a new district for you. So, may as well just do it, because if you don't, you're going to get smacked on the hand. So, lest you thought that gerrymandering was something the law abhors, in fact, sometimes the law requires it. Now, you may say, wait a second, Doug, I agree with the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And that's a fair position to take. Totally fair, valid position to take. Not going to argue that with you. Just understand gerrymandering is not inherently a negative then. If you like that gerrymandering, but you don't like this other gerrymandering right here, it's not gerrymandering you got a problem with. It's the outcomes. Be honest with yourself about that, okay? So let's talk about, additionally, there was a Supreme Court case that came out not long ago. I think it was Rucho. I might be pronouncing that wrong. That clarified that partisan consideration in redistricting is fine, at least from a federal perspective. Um, and look, redistricting is an inherently political process. It just is. And it's an inherently partisan process. And you can pretend it isn't, and you can complain about it, and you can whine about it, but there it is. So, who does gerrymandering? Who's responsible for it? Well, the reality here is both sides engage in it. There are no clean hands. Republicans do it, Democrats do it. Hmm. I'm a Republican, a pro gun Republican. And yeah, we do it. Other side does it too. Everybody does it. And in fact, if you didn't do it and the other side is still doing it, what you're doing is you're giving up seats in Congress. Because look, most of what this is about the control of the U.S. House of Representatives. That's really what's at issue here. And if in your state you're not gerrymandering to your own party's benefit, and the other party is in some other state, then you've got one hand tied behind your back in the boxing ring. That sounds smart to you? Nah, nah. The rules are what the rules are. To quote Barack Obama, elections have consequences. If we control the redistricting process, well, we're going to do it at least somewhat our way because the other side to do the exact same thing, maybe a little more. The fact is, everybody does it. Both sides do it. He said, Doug, just because both sides do it doesn't make it right. And that's a fair point. It does not make it right. Again, we're going to talk about these things honestly. Eventually, we'll get to proposed solutions towards the end of this video. But the fact is, I'm here to tell you, anybody that says, "Oh, Republicans are the big bad gerrymanders, and Democrats are clean and pure as white, wind-driven stuff," bull crap. And conversely too, both sides do it. How is it done? Let's talk about the mechanics of it, the brass tacks. Well, there's two things you need to know about gerrymandering. The terms are packing and cracking. In packing, we pack voters into a district, a large concentration of them, to make a district that is overwhelmingly of a certain partisan identification. So we got, let's say, 500,000 Democrat voters. We can pack into one congress. It takes about 750,000 roughly people to make a congressional district. So if you got a 500,000 Democrats, you can pack them all into one congressional district. You do it. Why? Because that then becomes an overwhelmingly Democrat district. And guess what happens then? Well, of course they're going to elect a Democrat, but there's less Democrat influence in the neighboring districts, which are more likely than to be Republican. And of course, you can do this vice versa. It's easier to do it one way than the other. I'll explain why in a minute. So that's packing. We pack a bunch of people that have the same political affiliation together. What's cracking? Cracking is kind of the opposite of that. We can take a large chunk of people of a particular political affiliation and we can split them into two or three or however many districts. So let's say that same 500,000 Democrat voters, got them all together. You could split them up into two or three districts. Let's say you do it in three districts. So it's about 170-ish thousand a pop. Okay, 500,000 Democrats would absolutely overwhelm a congressional district and make it a solid D district. But if I put 170,000 here, 170,000 here, 170,000 here, and then the rest of the district is pretty red, guess what I can guarantee? Or, well, largely likely result would be all three of those districts could still be Republican if the suburban areas adjoining that core of 500,000 Democrat voters were sufficiently red. I could eliminate a Democrat seat by cracking that core of voters. Very, very interesting. So packing, we keep them all together and we make an overwhelming district. Cracking, we split them up and we distribute things out. Those are the two fundamental tools in redistricting, in gerrymandering. Yeah, you may say, well, that's all right, kind of interesting, but why is one more commonly used than the other? The answer is yes. And the reason why is the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Not everywhere, but in a significant chunk of America's urban cores, it is possible to make a majority minority district. And again, if you can make a majority minority district and you don't, you're going to get your hands slapped. So if I have a half million African American voters in a city, I am strongly discouraged by the Voting Rights Act of 1965 from splitting them up, from cracking them, right? But nothing in the Voting Rights Act of 1965 says I can't pack them. I absolutely can pack. In fact, the law encourages you to pack them, almost requires it. So I make an overwhelming Democrat district centered in an urban core. There's one Democrat in Congress, and then everything around it is red, absolutely red. One criticism of the 1965 Voting Rights Act is that it actually decreases the amount of representation that African Americans get in Congress. One could make that. I'm not going to make that argument, but that is an argument that can be made, has been made. Now, it doesn't matter whether you think it's right or wrong. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 is in effect, and it's unlikely to be changed anytime soon. But I really don't care what the rules are. I just want to know what I can do within the rules to achieve the maximum advantage. So, you want a majority minority district? Great, fine. Happens to be that, at least currently in the last couple decades, African Americans overwhelmingly tend to vote Democrat. Okay, fine. Pack those Democrat votes together, let them have an overwhelmingly Democrat member of Congress. Cool. Everything around it can be read as it's fine. Great. No sweat off my back. Now, one of the common criticisms of gerrymandering is they don't like these weird shapes to districts. In fact, the original uh, uh, criticism, this here it is, this salamander shaped district, right? Was it's weird looking, man. It's this weird shape. People don't like those weird shapes. They want nice, simple, compact districts with relatively even numbers of voters. Okay, fine. That's a great ideal. May not be practical. The reason it may not be practical is to get exactly the same number of voters in every district in the state. In my state of Ohio, we have 50 congressional districts. In order to get exactly the same number of voters in every district and keep them fairly small, the odds that you're going to have to end up splitting some communities is pretty good. Okay. Or you can make the districts somewhat odd shaped and not split communities. There's give and take there. So, yeah, we would like every district to be nice and small and compact and simple geometry. That's an ideal that, like many ideals, is tough to attain. Now, you may say, wait a second, Doug, there's got to be a way mathematically we can do it. And look, I have an engineering degree, got a minor in math, big fan of math. There are absolutely algorithms that can do this. Um, Again, they may still end up splitting districts or splitting communities, splitting cities up. But mathematically, can you do it? Sure, you can. Yeah, you can. Um, but here's the trick: if let's say you decide to do this, we do this in the state of Ohio. We could absolutely have an algorithm split the state up perfectly fairly. People would still complain. Don't kid yourself. People would still complain. And in fact, if you did it perfectly with an algorithm that's just mathematically neutral, didn't care about partisan affiliation at all, I guarantee you somebody would sue, claiming violation of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, rather, and they'd probably win. Okay? Because they would say math is racist. And they'd probably win. They'd probably find a judge somewhere to agree with them. And if that's shocking to you, well, you haven't been paying attention. Okay? But regardless, could you have a mathematical equation to do this? Yes, you can. But if you do that in your state, then you need to do it in every state, to be fair, because this is a contest for the US House of Representatives. One state unilaterally disarming does not mean the other 49 states are going to change. So, one other difficulty, and this has nothing to do with racial identification, it has to do with partisan identification. What if, here's a hypothetical, what if people of a particular partisan affiliation happen to congregate together in a close geographical area? And for the record, this is not hypothetical, this is reality. Democrats self segregate into urban centers. They do. You can find Republicans just about anywhere. If you look, you can find Republicans in urban centers, just they get drowned out by the Democrats. You can find Republicans in suburbia. You can still find some Democrats there, but not very many. And you can find Republicans out in the rural areas. You'd be hard pressed to find a Democrat in a rural area. Now, whose fault is that? Seems to me like the Democrats are the ones segregating themselves. They've sifted and sorted themselves into these urban centers. They packed themselves in there. Again, this has nothing to do with racial identity. There are lots of cities that are not majority African American, but are majority Democrat. They're blue cities that absolutely are packed with Democrat votes. This is a partisan issue, not a racial issue. Okay. They segregated themselves along partisan lines. We didn't do it to them. They chose to do it. If you're going to pack yourselves, well, I mean, we'll be glad to draw the lines around where you already are. I mean, I can find a lot of Republicans willing to say these things, but I'll say it because we're talking about it the way it is. May not be pretty, but here's how it is. Is there a solution to gerrymandering? Well, there's a few possible solutions. One way is to have Congress force all states to use the same system, maybe an algorithm, some kind of mathematical formula. I think, was it shortest split line is one of the more popular ones that people like to talk about. That's a way to do it. Would be fair. Okay. Everybody would get, next census, let's say, here's a new system. Y'all got to use it. Shut up, take it, just do it. Okay, fine. It's antithetical to federalism, probably unconstitutional. Somebody would sue, and they'd probably win, and it'd get kicked out. But that's one way to do it. Again, probably wouldn't work, but you could try that. The most commonly suggested way to fix gerrymandering is with these nonpartisan commissions. Hmm. Every single one of them is a lie. They're lies. Everybody, anybody can have partisan leanings, whether they publicly state them or they don't. Okay. And some of these, oh, well, we're going to make up a commission of retired judges because a retired judge is, you know, noble and centrist and even and fair. Come on, they're humans, just like you, just like me, and they have their own biases. All of us do. Okay, that doesn't help the situation at all. So when you hear people talk about nonpartisan commissions, understand what they're saying is let's have a bunch of liars do the redistricting. That's what they're saying. I mean, look, even if you gave it to artificial intelligence, dude, AI can be biased. It just depends on who programs it and who trains it. Okay, you can absolutely get biased AI. If that surprises you, well, again, you're not paying attention. And then, of course, what typically happens a lot when people don't like an outcome of redistricting and they say that the map is gerrymandered is there's litigation. They go to court. And all this does is it moves the decision making from the public, the apportionment committee or whatever your state calls it, where, hey, if you vote for this person for auditor or this person for secretary of state or this, person for governor, whatever, this person has a seat on the apportionment committee. And you know that when you go into the voting booth and you cast your ballot. And you can weigh that as a factor in your vote. That's fine. It's fair, right? We're a representative republic, right? With certain democratic institutions. Okay, cool. It moves it from that forward facing, that public facing, honest about their biases, right? I've got 5 Republicans and 2 Democrats or whatever it is on the apportionment committee. Everybody knows what it is. And they knew it when they went into the voting booth. It takes it out of their hands and pulls it behind the black robe. Now, what's behind the black robe? A human being. And that human being has biases. I know they're not supposed to. I know they like to pretend they don't have them, but they have them. Just the way it is. We wish they didn't. We'd like our judges to be better than we are, and they try. Give them credit. They try. Like our yeah, noble thing to be a judge, but they're still human. Now there's biases influencing the outcome that we don't know about, and we didn't have a chance to vote on. It's taken the decision away from the voters and given it to somebody not answerable, and that's a problem. So, is there one, silver bullet solution that just fixes it all? No. There's a lot of ideas, a lot of attempts. Try this, try that. None of it's really worked out. So, look, in summary, gerrymandering's been with us, at least here in America, for a couple hundred plus years. It's going to continue to be. Deal with it. Okay. We can strive to improve redistricting. And for the record, there are some states that have had some very serious, very thoughtful debates, public debates about district drawing. My own state of Ohio is one of them. We have very serious, very thoughtful, very provocative conversation and voted on multiple redistricting reforms not that many years ago and passed overwhelmingly. And guess what happened when new districts got drawn in accordance with what people voted for? The process, people said overwhelmingly, Republicans and Democrats voted for it. Oh yeah, that's exactly what we. Yeah, thank you. That's exactly what we're looking for. People were pissed. They didn't like it. They called it racist, and they sued. So you gonna make people happy? Nah. No, you're not. Okay? Deal with the fact that you're not. Accept the fact that people are gonna be unhappy no matter what, no matter what the system, no matter what the result, no matter what the map looks like. Even if it's drawn by a mathematical equation that is unaware of what the partisan affiliation is unaware of what the racial makeup is, it's still gonna end up in court because people are gonna be pissed that they didn't win. That's just the reality. You may not like it, but that's how it is. Perfection, it ain't going to happen. Certainly not going to be universally accepted. Again, I am Doug with Tusk Consulting, tuskconsulting@gmail.com, tuskconsulting@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody. Catch you next one.